Hey friends, it's me, Christiana Gaudet, your Tarot Fairy Godmother. Welcome to class. Our class today, Tarot in Context. If you're here with us live, thanks so much for being here. If you're watching in replay, that's okay too. If you're watching in replay, please do leave questions or comments. I will get to them. If you're here live, of course, please do participate in the chat. We're gonna have some fun. Thank you so much to everyone who's here with me live right now. Caroline, you've just had a 12-hour shift. Thanks for being here. We appreciate that, and thanks for being a member. Again, special shout out to the members and the moderators. We appreciate all of you. Let's get going. All right, so the topic is context. Context is super, super important when it comes to tarot reading, and it's something we don't talk about enough. And the whole key is this. We know that any tarot card and any combination of tarot cards can mean a wide variety of things. And so the key is to figure out which meaning or meanings, because it could be more than one in a reading, which meaning or meanings is most appropriate in this context. And there are a number of ways that context can be determined in a tarot reading. And if you are a person who reads tarot professionally, casually, for yourself, for others, if you are doing readings that make sense, if you are doing readings that speak to your heart, you're already using context, whether you realize it or not. Today, we're just going to narrow that in right now. If you are someone who has a hard time figuring out what is this card saying in this situation, I'll give you a fabulous, hang on a minute. Excuse me, my allergies are so bad. Oh my gosh. I'm healthy otherwise though, so I really shouldn't complain. All right. I'm going to give you a great example of why context is important. One of the first tarot classes I ever taught, it was like a 4-week series at Adult Education. And I had assigned the Celtic Cross, play with this. And the next week someone said, so I got in the crossing position the Knight of Wands. How could my biggest problem right now, be a young person, right? She had no kids. She had no plans of having kids. So then we had to talk about, okay, well, in this context, that night means something else. Perhaps it's a trip you want to take. Perhaps it's something you want to pursue. We figured out what it was. But that's really the key, right? It's got to make sense in context. So let's play with this. And first, let me say a big thank you to Lisa Harmon for the super sticker. Thanks for being a member, and thanks for supporting this broadcast with a super sticker. I really appreciate it. Good Journeys Tarot. Rosemary, so nice to see you. Yeah, man, is it bad where you are? It's been like non-stop things that make me cough and sneeze for a while now, and I'm not happy about it, but oh well. There it is. All right, thank you for that, and thanks everyone for being here. So, I came up with a list. Let's start with this. My list. What creates context in a card interpretation? I came up with 4 things. This is not necessarily a comprehensive list. This is what I could think of for me. What can you think of for you? What would you like to add to this list? Go ahead and chat it in. What gives context for you? So for me, it's the question of the situation, the spread position, the position that the card is in, much like the example I gave you. It was the crossing position. It was difficult for her because it was a challenge and she couldn't figure out how to interpret that card in that context. Surrounding cards. Imagine, if you will, say you're doing a tarot spread. Say you're doing a tarot spread of 7 cards, 8 cards, 10 cards, 11 cards. And there's one card that you find a very difficult card. Maybe it's the Ten of Swords, maybe it's the Three of Swords, maybe it's the Tower, maybe it's a card that you have a really personal, unfortunate resonance with. Now, no matter what position that card is in, if the other cards in the spread are light and happy cards, cards that you identify as light and happy, that's going to diminish the negative meaning of that one card, isn't it? The other way is true too. If the other cards in the spread are also cards that you find distasteful, that's going to confirm and perhaps increase that unfortunate interpretation. So, surrounding cards. Intuition. Intuition is such an interesting one, and it's going to be the one that I'm not really able to teach in this environment, but we will talk about it. You know, how does intuition influence our interpretation of a card? I think very often for me, I'll just look at the card and I'll feel a certain way about it. And sometimes it's like, you know, first reading of the day, that card comes up and I'm like, oh, such a sweet card. That's so nice. And that's the interpretation. Same card comes up, next reading, different situation. And I'm looking at the same card and I'm like, ooh, it doesn't look so good. Now, does that mean that there are no set meanings, that there is no place where tarot is a thing that holds together? Of course not. Of course not. When we think about this, I really encourage you to think about the cards as people. People are incredibly complex, right? Describe yourself or any person you know, and there's going to be many, many, many descriptors. And those descriptors will all be subject to context. For example, am I a person who likes to get dressed up and go out all dressed up? In the right context, yes. In the wrong context, no, God, no. No, that's like the seventh layer of hell. No. So which is it? I'm still me. It's still me, but depending on the context, that's either going to be yes or no. So there is a way that each card holds together. And there is a way that each card holds together, that each card holds together. But within that holding together, there's a spectrum. There's a spectrum on every card. Okay, so couple of things here. Tortoiseshell Moon, Kathy, that's a great list. I sometimes add clarifying cards for context too. And I think that's a really good point. And now you'll all get to see that I have really lousy handwriting. But when we talk about surrounding cards, there's also the technique of clarifying cards. I mean, technically, a clarifying card is not a surrounding card because the surrounding card you dealt as part of the spread. The clarifying card you pull later to establish context. Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, let's see what else we got. Justine, this is why for larger complex readings that I do for myself, I like to go card by card when I have the time and try to clarify my interpretations as best as possible. Always good. So that I can base the other interpretations off the other cards. All right? Kyla, it's nice to see you. I feel like I haven't seen you in a long time. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a member. Intuition for me is often about making the connection between the rapport I develop with the person I'm reading for and the first three types of context you list. So you bring up a really interesting point that I didn't, sort of put in, which is the, whatever that energy exchange is. Whatever that energy exchange is. But isn't that connection, if you're reading for someone in person, if you're reading for someone by email, if you're reading for someone you haven't, spoken with, you're reading for someone in this context, whatever it is, isn't intuition part of it? Like, can we clarify that intuition is intuition regarding the cards, but it's also intuition regarding the person itself and anything else, ... meaning anything else. We'll put the ellipsis, because intuition, and I think this is a really important point, so thank you for bringing it up, Kylas. When we're like, this is a whole thing, man. I'm about to go off on a whole tangent. Forgive me. Let me just say, Clumsy Clairvoyance, I feel like I haven't seen you in a million years. Thanks for being here. We really appreciate you. Thanks for being a member. Thanks for being a moderator. Thanks for sending me great tarot decks. I use my purse deck like every day, and I think you missed it, but I just used Tarot of the Divine for a live recently. Thank you. And thanks for being a member for 19 months. We appreciate you. Okay. So here's I got all excited because Clumsy Clairvoyance is here. And now, what was the rant I was about to go off on? Give me a minute. Here it is. Say you're in a reading with someone, and let's, for the sake of this conversation, let's say it's a professional reading. Even if you're not a professional reader, let's say it's a reading that you're trying to conduct with that same comport. You're really trying to conduct it in that professional way. So we all fall into a trap where if the reading happens to be about something that we know about or something we've experienced in our own lives, in some cases, if there is a rapport there, such as Kyla suggests, we will share stuff that has nothing to do with the cards at all, that has to do with our own experiences or experiences of people we know because they're pertinent. Is that a legitimate part of a tarot reading? That's a whole other class, but it's an interesting question, and it leads up to the next thing I'm going to say. Is it a legitimate part of a tarot reading? You might say whatever happens in the tarot reading is legitimate because you're in that cauldron, that sacred space, that container. Or you might say, no, a tarot reading is a tarot reading. Keep your other stuff out of there. But what about the intuitive piece? The intuitive piece can be what you see in the cards. The intuitive piece, as Kyla says, can be what you pick off directly that person, which can happen whether you're in person or not. Intuition can come in any way. It can be a song that comes into your head, something you see, things having nothing to do with the cards. Are those things valid in a tarot reading? I would say yes, and without question. So I think there are questions as to how much how much of our own personal experiences do we want to share in a reading? How much of, that commonality makes sense? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, I think. You have to really be the judge of that in each situation. But when it comes to intuition, if it really is coming in as intuition, I don't think you have to really, I think your cards will confirm it. I think it's very rarely that the cards will say one thing and your intuition will say something different. If that happens, it may be that your interpretation of the cards is limited and that there would be a way, a legitimate, traditional way the cards could be interpreted to match your intuition. Now, in the rare circumstance when you really are getting intuition and cards disconnected, not saying the same thing, my advice is be honest about that and say that. And say, this is what I think the cards are saying, and this is what my intuition is saying. Any idea why we have this disconnect? And you could find there's a real reason for it. So, let me go, okay. Okay, Sarah Blackberg, nice to see you. Pulling a clarifying card always feels like a failure to me. I should be able to dig into whatever card has been pulled without pulling more. So, I got you. I understand what you're saying, and I get that. And I do think there are people who rely overly much on the clarifying card. I do think there are people who are just like, clarify, without doing the work. And people are like, well, this card is the clarifier. Okay, why? Back up. People will reach out to me with readings they've done to ask for help interpreting them. And they'll say, okay, this is the position and this is the clarifying card. And they'll say, okay, why did you pull the clarifying card? What was the question? What weren't you getting that caused you to pull the clarifying card? And if they can't answer that, then there's no place for the clarifying card, in my opinion. So I feel like, A, should is a funny word, and you know it, because you put it in the marks there. The thing is, it's not a lack of skill. If you're not getting, or it's not necessarily a lack of skill, if the cards aren't speaking to you the way they are, don't make that be a lack of skill. I mean, maybe it is, and maybe you'll brush up on your skills and it won't happen so much. But it could be a million other things, and it could be that the universe needs you to have another card. And so what you should do is give the universe what it needs so the universe can speak to you through tarot the way it needs to. So I wouldn't pull them willy-nilly. I wouldn't pull them without reason. But don't feel bad about pulling them, and pull them when you have a good reason to. Does that make sense? Maybe. Okay. Betty Flusher. Nice to see you. Thanks for being a member. It's like some words have different meanings in different contexts. It's like there. So I would say not that, because those are two different words. They're spelled differently. There, T-H-E-R, is one thing. There, T-H-E-I-R, is another thing. Two different things. They just happen to sound the same in English. Well, they are English words, so yeah, of course. But you've got a good point. What about a word that is spelled the same but has many different meanings, such as object, O-B-J-E-C-T, or that very same word can be pronounced object. It's a verb, I object. It's a noun, this is an object, but it's spelled exactly the same. But the pronunciation is different and the meaning is different. And the only clue is the context of the sentence. Because if the sentence is, I object to that, I object to that, wouldn't make any sense at all. So yeah, that's a very, very good analogy. Oh, this is good, Claire. Man, you just brought up a whole other thing. That's probably a whole other class, but worth addressing here. Claire C., thanks for being here. Thanks for being a member. Do the cards ever jump in with a card to warn the client of something unrelated to the original question? Oh, holy hot dogs, yes. Absolutely yes, and without a question. And this is a hard thing, because as a tarot teacher, I will typically say, interpret the card in the context of the question that was asked. And that's going to be our whole second half exercise here. But once in a while, you're going to run into a situation where the client wants to talk about this, but the client's cards are all about this. And you'll say, these are the things that are coming up. And the client will be like, yeah, but I don't want to talk about that. And you end up with this, the universe thinks this is what's most important. And I think you can, having said that, reshuffle, do it again, try to get the information they're looking for. But I think you also have to convey that whether or not you were here for this, I'll give you what you're here for, but additionally, whether or not you were here for this, this is what's here for you. Whether or not you were here for this, this is what's here for you. And some people can hear it and some people can't. Justine, and thank you, Justine, for being a member, being a moderator. Yeah, because as you take in the other person's reactions to the cards or what you're saying, we integrate that information and it influences what we'll say next. Potentially seems impossible to control. So that's so interesting. And it's a really good point. And this is where, like, doing phone readings is a really good exercise, because you got nothing. You got no facial expressions. If they're sort of quiet and they're not laughing or umming or commenting, you got nothing coming back. That's a great way to do it, because you don't have that to integrate that. And I do think, body language. You're sitting across from someone and you're reading for them. I remember one person who was one of those people, I don't know if it was her or her friends told her, don't tell the reader anything. Don't show the reader anything. let the reader do the reading without any influence from you. So she's sitting there the entire time. And I'm sure it was conscious, no jewelry, dressed very, in a way that you couldn't really comment on. And she just sits there the entire time. It's an hour-long reading, and I'm just going on and on and on and on, and nothing. And then I said something, and it was a risk, whatever it was. There's, the things, this is true, this is true, this is true. This is what I think it's true, and it's a big thing, and there's no rolling it back if I'm wrong. But this is what I think, so I said it. No nod, no nothing, but her eyes flashed. Just a little. Her eyes changed, just a little. I was like, phew, I got her. So yeah, we do. When we can, we do look for those things, right? Trey, I think it depends. I've had readings with people where I felt like all they did was project their own stuff onto me. Right. And that's where I think we have to be so careful about not talking too much about ourselves in a reading and not sharing. If a person is interested in green widgets and your father was a green widget maker, you might mention something just a little to make a connection, but you don't want to make it that be the whole reading, right? Claire, I think intuition is valid anytime. Perhaps mentioning that it's based on experience, right? Serena, absolutely. Yes. Oh, that's a huge point. Wherever you're getting your information, let people know. I'm getting this from my cards. This is coming from my intuition. This has nothing to do with the cards or intuition or anything, I don't think. It's just something I happen to know. Be willing to do that. Okay. Serena, intuition, all the Claires, but we need to be clear when our own stuff is crowding in. For me, this is clear. The separation is clear. Yeah, it needs to be. Serena was the one who really taught me the difference, and I think this is important here too. The difference between sort of intuition, which is really coming from within, and the clairs, the psychic stuff, which in many ways is coming from without. And that's in there as well. So let's put the clairs. Let's put the clairs here as well, because that's a thing. Okay, Lisa Harmon. Once again, thanks for being a member. Thanks for using members. Thanks for what did you do? You did a good thing. You did a super sticker. Thank you. I'm so appreciative. 2 months after my husband died, I had a reading. The reader just stopped and the look on his face was, uh-oh. I told him that my husband had died and he said it was in the spread. Yep. And see, that's hard too. I think for a lot of us, we'll see the thing and we won't know. Did it just happen? Is it about to happen? Do you know it happened? Do you know it's going to happen? Like, it's hard to put on the timeline. And so we see it, but we don't know where in the timeline they are, right? So that can be hard. Oh, clumsy clairvoyance. This is good. Christiana, you told me before, even if you feel like you're just making something up on the spot, that often your third eye or abilities coming through. It comes natural now, and I rarely second guess it. Yeah, that's a good point. When you're doing the reading and you're past that card by card thing and you're just telling the story and saying what you think and what you see, at some point it's just coming out and you're like, where is this coming from? And that's the point. Like, you may not know where you're getting it from. Is it from the cards? Is it from intuition? Is it from Great Aunt Mary coming through in spirit? You don't know, and it's okay to say that too. Sometimes clients will say to me, and how do you know that? And I'll say, I don't know. It's just what comes to me. Take it for what it's worth. There it is. Now, Tortoiseshell Moon. Kathy, thanks for being here. Thanks for being a member. This is important. Sometimes, okay, and I'm going to split a hair with you. And this is just linguistic. It's just semantic. And it's me. This is me. There's no tarot police and there's no authoritative one person when it comes to tarot. But I would argue that, okay, here's what you say, Kathy. I don't rely on clarifiers, but sometimes the card brings up additional questions that I need to clarify. I would argue that's not a clarifier. Not at all. That's a legitimate part of your tarot reading process that has nothing to do with clarification. That's the next question that needs to be answered. From my perspective, a clarifying card is Knight of Swords, Knight of Swords. I just can't figure out what the Knight of Swords is about. What are you telling me? Are you telling me to be quick? Are you telling me to write a book? Are you telling me to speak my truth? Is it about my son? What is this card about? I just don't know. I just don't know. Let me pull a clarifying card. It's my son. This is my son. We need to talk about that. Okay, fine. Fine. That's a clarifying card. Now, let's come back. Same card. I believe this card is telling me that I need to write a book. But what do I need more information about writing a book. I need to know about that process. I need to know about how I'm going to do that. How's it going to go? What's it about? I need to know more. That's not a clarifying card. That is a whole other question. And I believe that a good tarot reading typically is not just one question. It may start with no question at all, and then many questions will come up and we'll need to answer them. It may start with one question, but then there may be many, many questions. And so if a card raises a question, then you knew what that card meant. You knew that card was there to ask the question. Because in our reading, many times, cards are there to ask questions, which we then must answer with other cards. But that's not clarification. That's just the process, in my opinion. Does that make sense? Anyone want to argue me on that? I'm happy to debate on any of this because, again, just my opinion, right? Okay. Oh, Betty, the pumpkin story. Yeah, that was that's such a good story. I tell that story from time to time, and it's probably in at least one book that I've written because it's such a good story. And if I have time, I'll tell it again today, but whatever. Let me just get through, let me get through this. And Serena, I never talk about myself in a reading, and I think that's a decent policy. I like that. So just the sidebar about the people who just don't want to give any information or themselves be part of the reading at all. They just want to know what you see. I had one of them, and it was on the phone. Never met the person, no idea. She made me talk for 55 minutes. I just did it. I asked the questions. She wouldn't ask any questions, no nothing. Celtic cross. These are the questions I get from the Celtic cross. These are the answers to that. These are the things I believe to be true. So at 55 minutes, I was like, okay, so that's what I see. We have 5 minutes left. I'm ready for your questions and comments. She said, that is the best reading I've ever received from anybody. I had no idea that I was giving a good reading. I didn't know. And so that's not really about context at all. It's just about the fact that sometimes you won't know and you just got to keep talking. But anyway, let's move on. Trey, some readings are easier than others. Oh my gosh, yes. Some I put it down, I know exactly what's going on. Other times I have to work for it. Yes. And going back to the person who, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, the person who felt like she should just always know. Each reading is different, and the quality of the reading. This is easy. It's flowing like butter. This is stuttery and jittery. This is confusing and crazy. The quality of the reading is part of the reading. Just interpret it. Interpret the experience you're having. If you're looking at the cards and you're like, good Lord, I don't know what I'm looking at, that's part of the reading. And that explains something about what's going on. So check in with your experience of the reading itself, because it's always going to be different, and that's not about your skill. Audrey, can you use a clarifying card to guide on the timeline? Again, I wouldn't call that a clarifier. I would call that, let's do a reading on the timing. I would call that part of the process. For me, a clarifier is very clearly, help me understand what this card is about. Clarify for me why this card is presenting. That's a clarifier. Anything else is just doing another question within the context of the reading. Okay. Okay. Oh, Serena. Again, probably a whole other class. How do the different visuals on the many decks we use impact and influence our readings? That's very person to person. For some people, it's a big influence. For others, not at all. Like, if I work with this versus my Serena, my beloved Orbifold, these are very different kinds of images. And I might feel differently about, each one, depending. So, yeah, I think that's person to person, but that's true. Yeah. Oh, you just did a really good word there, tortoiseshell moon, Kathy. I probably rely too much on a spread when sometimes it needs to be more conversational. Yeah, I think you need to have both of those skills for sure. Amy Emberhart, nice to see you. When I follow the questions as you are explaining, at the end of the reading, many times the client will say that all their questions have been answered, even the questions they needed but didn't know. Yes, and that's how you know you did a good job. Anna Luisa, I haven't seen you in forever, so nice to see you. The ease or lack of ease also tells us a lot about the energy of the reading. Yes, the way the cards behave even before being placed on the table. Right. Is it hard to shuffle them? Are they going all over? All of that matters. And Claire brings up a good point, too, that sometimes rephrasing the question helps. All right, so now let's go back. Okay, so we've got all of these things, right? Let's start. I don't know how many of these we're going to get through, but we're going to do some. We're going to play with this. Let's start with the question and the situation. This is a list. And if you are a reader at all, and I know we have many professional readers here today, I think you will identify all of these questions as really common questions that you might get in the course of a practice. I handled every one of these questions within the past 2 days. Okay, what does my mother in spirit want me to know? Is this new person I met a potential love interest? What sort of career would be best for me? What is the true intention of my new employee whom I do not trust? Will I get the job I applied for? Will I be able to buy a house? Right? Those all seem like decent, reasonable questions you might get at the tarot table, right? So we're going to play with this. Let me just go back. Clumsy Clairvoyance, regarding Serena's question about the cards, I think it depends on how much of a visual person you may or may not be. Also, some decks may bring out a different flow or way of reading in the cards in the moment. Absolutely. Ani, nice to see you. Thanks for being here. All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do one card. I'm going to pull one card, as you can see, at random. I've not planned this out, okay? One card at random, and we're going to go through and find a way to interpret this card to answer each of these questions, just to give you a sense of how this could work. Then we'll throw in surrounding cards. Justine loves this exercise, and the reason we're doing this here tonight is in one of our Stars and Suns Zooms, I asked people what they wanted to do in these classes, and Justine asked for this, so blame Justine if you don't like it. But she's excited because she asked for it. Okay. Oh, and Serena, that's a good point. It depends on your training, the visual part, right? Right, because if you're trained to see things a certain way, to interpret colors a certain way, for example. Okay, so here's the card we're going to work with. 6 of Cups. This is perfect. What does my mother in spirit want me to know? Okay, what I would take from that is that she has always been with you. She's with you now. That she did her very best to give you a happy childhood. And she's still with you, right? Is this new person I met a potential love interest? You may feel a real sense of familiarity with this person. You may feel like you've known this person forever, even though you just met this person. That's good, but don't interpret it. Don't over-spiritualize it. This could be because there's a past life connection. This could be because you're really compatible. But it could be a past life connection that is not necessarily compatible. Or it could be that this person has toxic traits that you in a childhood or earlier relationship were trained to deal with and are therefore familiar with. So the feeling of familiarity you have with this new person may or may not be a good thing. So proceed with caution. Okay, so Serena, you're looking at this. What does my mother in spirit want me to know? She wants things to be as they were. Which is, that's yeah, okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. What sort of career would work best for me? Working with children, being a therapist and helping people sort out their family issues, something in service to others, or maybe, looking at the pictures as a context, being a gardener. Any of those things. Justine, wait, so if you thought that it would be that they could be really compatible in a reading, would you hold that insight back from them just in case you're off on it? I've learned a lot. And, that's probably a class we should do. I'm doing June class. I'm putting June classes together right now. We should do this class again soon. Love relationship stuff. Oh, my gosh. I have learned never, ever, ever, never, ever, ever tell someone that, yes, this person you've just met is definitely the one. No, I never would. Once I said to someone she was going on a blind date, and she asked me to pull one card, and I did. It was a friend. And I said, this is either everything or nothing. One or the other. Everything or nothing. Turns out it was everything. She married him. He was from another country. She moved to that country, so it really was everything. But yeah, I always leave some wiggle room because love is unpredictable. So here's my question. When we talk about nostalgia, so, let's talk about mother in spirit. Like, interpreting, okay, I'm doing a reading for someone. They want to know what their mother wants them to know. And I mean, whatever you get intuitively is what you get. But mother in spirit, speaking to adult child here on the planet, certainly, a bit of nostalgia, remembering the good things, and then it might even come into your mind, dancing in the kitchen, going to the beach, those good things. This could take you to, that would be an interesting thing. This card going to nostalgia could get you some images of those nostalgic things. So the message is going to be, your mother is reminding you of that time you went to the beach. Your mother is reminding you of, that, whatever it is. And this card can be the gateway to that. Does that make sense to you? So this could be like with that nostalgia that both Serena and Sarah spoke to. We could use this card in that context of spirit communication to say, okay, spirit wants to show me something from the past, so go ahead and show it to me. And then I can say it. All right. All right, so next. The true intention of my new employee whom I do not trust. Did you know this employee? Like, my first question here would be, did you know this employee before you hired them? Had you worked together before? Is there a history here? I would look to the history. And if this person was untrustworthy in the past, this, by the way, was an actual reading I did today. And it's funny that this card came up because exactly this situation: was untrustworthy in the past, but has a specific skill set. So got hired for a specific project temporarily and is behaving in all the old untrustworthy ways. So that was the actual situation today, right? So that's one thing. But another thing, okay, what is the true intention of my new employee who I do not trust? If it's not a past connection that you have with this person, so something that is already known to you about this person, then we're looking at this person's past. And it could be to work on skills that they've always wanted to have. It could be that, maybe they're perfectly trustworthy. They just really want these skills. So there's nothing about this card that's inherently not trustworthy. And that's a good one, Lisa. What if the reason you don't trust this person is that this person reminds you in their mannerisms, in their speech, in their visage, reminds you of someone you know that you don't trust? That's a very good one. Claire, I would buy a book about this exercise. I know, someone should write one. Maybe I will, I don't know. So yeah, that was really good, yes. And with this question, the true intention of my new employee who I do not trust, this is a really interesting trick question in a lot of ways. Because A, it's a third-party question looking into someone's head for their true intention, may or may not be within your ethics. 2, you hired them and you do not trust them, so that's an interesting dynamic that needs to be dealt with. And 3, why do you not trust them? Where did that come from? So there's a lot there, and obviously you're going to need more than one card, but and the not trusting, is it from your past? There's a lot you can do there. All right, next one. Hang on. I missed some stuff. Give me a minute. Can the intention be a patronizing attitude with the Six of Cups? It sure could be. If you see that, it sure could be. Sarah, Six of Cups is not always positive for me. Children have little agency in their lives and things can happen to them without their will. So is that employee going to do that? Fair. Absolutely fair. Yep. It could also, what else this could be? That the employee is like stuck with past technology. That you're trying to get a person to work on a modern computer and they're still trying to figure out how to format their floppy disk. Could be one of those too. All right, next question. Will I get the job I applied for? This is interesting. I would almost say that the job may go to someone that is already a known entity. They may have already figured out who they want and they're just going through the application process because they have to. And nepotism will rule the day. That might be where I go with that. Interesting. Back to the employee. Serena says the employee would be in a bit of a bubble. Trey agrees with me that we're not getting the job, that this card would say we're probably not getting the job. Unless, what if it's a job you've done before and you're trying to return? Then it might be. If it's a job you had before and you're returning to it, then it might be. Okay. You should even want this job. Right. Tortoiseshell Moon, regarding the employee, that they look up to you. The employee looks up to you. That's a good one. Okay. Will I be able to buy a house? I would look at this and I would say, well, you have a very specific dream, goal, plan, vision of the sort of house you want and what you want it to be like. And it's a vision you've had for a long time. So I would believe that, yes, you can make that vision happen. I would believe. Okay. So this is an interesting one, Sarah, talking about reframing the question and the whole thing about yes and no questions with tarot. And when I'm teaching a beginner class, I do tell the beginners to avoid the yes and no questions. I do. Because they are questionable when it comes to tarot. When I teach a more advanced class, which this is, I don't. And I do think rephrasing the question is totally legitimate and sometimes exactly the right thing to do. But sometimes, especially in a professional setting, people are paying you to ask that question. And if the question is answerable, not every question is answerable in every situation, but if a question is answerable, I will try to answer it. And sometimes it's not, and they're paying me. And I'll even joke about it. Like I'll go round and round and find lots of information. And I'll say to them, the actual question you came here to ask, I cannot answer. But I hope that the information I gave you is helpful, and usually it is. So yeah, there are times when absolutely yes. Anna, will I be able to buy the house? Yes, but you're going to have to bribe the realtor. That's fabulous. That's fabulous. I love that. So this is interesting, Betty, because this card can deal with age. It might be ageism in the job. You might be too old for the job, right? There, they might say that. Okay, so what we just illustrated is this one card can mean a bunch of different things, but back to, does the card hold together? Yes. In every case, we're somehow dealing with the past. We're somehow dealing with this sense of youth or looking to the past or nostalgia or what is already known. And we're applying that to each context. So there's an example. Now, let's do it like this. Same card. No, let's do something different. Let's go with one of these questions and just one. Let's do this one. What sort of career would be best for me? We're going to do one card. Justine is hoping for a reversal. We'll see if a reversal comes up. Okay, what sort of career would be best for me? You got your wish, a reversal. A career there where you never have to talk to anybody. I mean, that could be real, right? There are careers where you really don't have to deal with people. And so my first thought here is the sort of career that would be best for this person is a career where they really don't have to talk to people and they really don't have to deal with people. That would be one. Another is, I feel like whatever career would be best for you, it's going to require education. You need education. And even like if you have no idea what you want, it's going to take schooling. And I think there's a history here where you haven't been given, like in your home and you're growing up, you haven't been given a lot of space to know what you want, to be allowed to want things. So of course you don't know what you want to do, in life, in your career. So go to a school, talk to a career counselor, so I might go that way too. But how does another card, we could call this a clarifier, we could pretend that in the context of this reading, this was just the card that came up. Working with troubled children, that's a good one, I love that, yes, perfect. Working with troubled children, so good, yes. All right. And now we very much have working with troubled children because here we have this broken home situation, right? Or it could be working with people in a marginalized community, a people helping job working with people in a marginalized community. Serena, something that you have not been curious about yet but could be. Oh, Sarah, submariner. Oh my gosh, that's perfect to be a submariner. Yeah, beautiful. Or an undersea diver, an underwater photographer, in fact. An underwater welder, something underwater. That is so smart. I love that. I love that. Okay, so let's try another card. Right, working in a juvie facility. Okay, Serena, going out on a limb. I'm out of. I don't know what that's. I don't know what to hook that into. Help me out with that. Okay, now, what sort of career? That's really interesting. I would almost want to say helping runaways, or helping migrants, or something having to do with travel that hasn't gone well. Okay, so Justine wants to take this card and put this card in, other contexts. What does my mother in spirit want me to know? That you can talk to her. You just have to have the patience and the heart to talk to her, and she'll talk to you. Is this new person I met a potential love interest? Who the heck knows? One or both of you is really shy. You're going to have to talk to each other to figure it out. What is the true intention of my new employee whom I do not trust? This employee is not a good learner and is not a good communicator. There's nothing here that suggests there's a bad intention, but let's put another card with that. Honestly, I think this person has come to this job after a difficulty, trying to make the best of a difficulty, and is here to try to get their life together. Okay. Will I get the job I applied for? Probably not. Will I be able to buy a house? Do you want to buy a house? Really? What's up with that? Are you doing things to buy a house? This is not a very buy a house kind of a card. Well, let's put another card with it. Yeah, maybe in a while, but you're not. If you want to buy a house, you better do the things to help you buy a house, because you're not doing that right now. Oh my gosh, Claire, that was so smart. Oh my gosh. The page is reversed, Serena. For me, if the page is reversed, they may not be a good learner. Not a good communicator, not a good learner. In my opinion. Claire, going back to the Page of Cups reversed with the Knight reversed, helping alcoholics who have fallen off the horse. Oh, so good. So good. So there we go. Okay, so we just played with question situation, which is sort of the same as spread position, but not entirely. Let's play with spread position. Yeah. Serena, lovely tangent. That's good. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Spread position. So what's a spread that we use or know about, say past, present, future? Okay. So say this card. All right. This card, world reversed, is in the past. What might we say to the world reversed in the past? It seems like when we look to the past, there's a lot that you feel was undone, perhaps, a lot that you did not complete. Perhaps there's things you don't have closure to. Perhaps there's a lot of loose ends. Perhaps you've just moved. Perhaps in the past you lived someplace else. Maybe you didn't even live in this country. Maybe you came from a different country. Present, world reversed. And these are just examples. There's a lot, there's no one right answer, but just to give you the content, the concept, to give you the concept. Oh, on a difficulty giving birth. Oh gosh, yes. In the past, that could be a birth injury. That could be a difficult birth. Oh my goodness gracious, yes. Angelic Michelle, so nice to see you. Right, card that comes up for a simple demonstration. I know, I almost just faked it out and pulled another one, but no, I'm honest. Okay, present. Perhaps you don't know where you want to live. Perhaps you will have to take a trip that you don't want to take. Perhaps you're not very happy with what's going on in the planet. Perhaps your personal world is turned upside down. Future, the world is your oyster. You just have to figure out what you want, right? So same card, 3 different positions. Does that make sense? Oh, Serena, past lives, regret, unmet needs, connection, relationship. Sure. All right, so there's spread position. We've done surrounding cards, clarifying cards. Intuition. We've talked a bit about intuition. We've talked about how the card might appear to you. How do you feel about the card? But then also recognizing, as Serena taught me, the difference between intuition and the clairs, and that can all come in. Today we talked about using the card as a hook to invite in the clairs. We did that with the 6 of Cups. Okay, Mom in Spirit, you got nostalgia. Give me a memory to share with your bereaved kid. Okay, we can do that. Oh, very good. Good interpretations, past, present, and future from people. All really good. Good ideas. So the other thing with the intuition, I would say, is make sure when you go into the reading that you really feel connected with that you've done your breathing, your meditation, your whatever it is you do. I mean, my thing takes 30 seconds, but it's absolutely necessary to make that connection and recognize that's part of it. So, we are 3 minutes away from our end time. I want to thank everyone for being here. I am open to any questions in these next 3 minutes. I am open to whatever questions you have about what we've done, what we've talked about, what made sense, what didn't make sense. While I'm waiting for your questions to come in, I do want to let you know tomorrow, the Friday weekly wrap-up will not be at noon as usual. You may notice that my normal weekly lives have been weird this week. Why? Weird week schedule-wise, that's all. So I will pop on at some point tomorrow, but it will not be at the normal time. Serena, what do you do if you don't feel connected? Breathe and connect. And wonder, is there a reason I'm not connecting? Is there something up with that person? I try to interpret that energy. The most important thing, though, don't panic. Don't panic. That's the important thing. You can get through anything in a reading as long as you don't panic. All right. I do also want to let you know, we are working so hard to get the StarCon 2024 changes to the website up and the tickets made available. It's coming. I mean, it can be any day. We are working so hard on this. StarCon 2023. I'm sorry. StarCon 2023 was fabulous. StarCon 2024 is coming January 19th through 21st. Mark your calendars. Rosemarie, how quickly do you believe it takes to learn each tarot card? A lifetime. I'm still learning the cards. If the question is at what point should a person become a professional reader, I would say after a person has done feeling successful about it, 50 to 100 readings for practice that they didn't have a book with, they didn't consult the book, didn't take money for, but got feedback from the client. And I mean a real reading, not like will I meet someone? No, not that. A full reading, a half hour, an hour, a full reading. That's when you go pro. But how long does it take to learn each card? A lifetime, because we're always learning from them. In terms of at what point can a person be off book? For me, it took about a year. I had one person, it took about 6 weeks, but she did nothing but study. So, yeah, there we go. All right, my friends. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your kind words. You know what we did not handle today at all was timing. A couple of people. Audrey, you mentioned timing and nice to see you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a member. Serena mentioned timing. A few of you mentioned timing, and I just didn't do it. We did do a timing class, but it was like 3 years ago. So I am seeing the need to do another timing class, and maybe we'll do that in June or July. So I'm sorry we didn't get to that today, but noted, and we will get there. My friends, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you soon. Be good.